Homer led the league in tackles with 85. The deep ball for Darius Prince, and Philadelphia's on the board first.
On the draw, this is Bryson Allen. And Allen weaving his way all the way down to the 22.
10-yard line, 5. Mayfield, dancing all around. Throwing as far as he can throw it. Jump ball coming. Crazy stuff. Not this time.
And you want to be a wide receiver, you're going to have to take a little bit of a hit like that as Brown got him in that shoulder, but watch. Those are teeth.
Do we have a dentist on staff here?
All right, I'm very excited to introduce my next guest, somebody I consider a little bit more than a normal guest. He's been on here a couple times as a host, as a co-host, as a guest. Now he's on the other side of the camera. I'll be asking him the questions tonight. Very recently, you had some news break that inspired me. Obviously, you know, we've spoken about that a lot off camera. But Evan, you've recently been hired as the Assistant Director of Player Personnel for the Vegas Knighthawks. That's kind of what brings you here tonight. Thank you for your time. Let's go ahead and jump right into your career and what brings you here tonight.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Let's do it.
Absolutely. So far, I mean, how's your night going anyway?
Yeah, you know, good. I mean, not too much going on, you know, pretty chill Saturday night for me. So good time to be doing stuff like this and talking about football. You know, I could talk about that for a long time at any time. So it works out.
Absolutely. That's what brought us together in the first place. For those of you guys who don't know, who happen to be watching, Evan and I used to work together at News Hub. He's since moved into the scouting world. I still work there currently writing. So check out all their content right now on newshub.com. But I wanted to start this one with what kind of got you into football and what developed your love for the sport?
Yeah, man, it's a good question. It's one I get asked a lot, but it's a good question. You know, I wasn't somebody who grew up liking sports, and that's kind of the interesting part about where everything started. Was I was never really into athletics or anything like that. You know, so not just football, but like basketball. None of those things really appealed to me as a kid. To be honest with you, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a pilot. I loved aviation. I loved planes. I traveled a lot as a kid. You know, going to different states and countries and things like that with my family. So that was originally what I wanted to go into. But, you know, over time, as I got, you know, to middle school and eventually high school, you know, I was around a lot of guys who were into sports, and football in particular was one that stood out and that guys could get excited about. You know, we would always talk about it. And, you know, it was just something that was always there for me when I needed it most. You know, I had some health stuff growing up. You know, football helped me get through that. So, again, something that you could always lean on. I found it to be very reliable. And, you know, once I started getting into the more player-specific aspect of it, I realized, you know, a lot of lives can be changed around this. And it is more than a sport. You know, it's a culture. It's a lifestyle. It's so many different things. And, you know, I think that's just what I love about it. You know, I love being able to give guys opportunities and see guys, you know, succeed at different levels of the game, you know, helping them out. You know, just like I know you like to do that too through the media world. You know, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with how, you know, my love for the game came to be. You know, I'd say it was very quick. You know, my love for the game developed very quickly. It was only a couple years because I'm still young. But, you know, I've been able to do a lot with it in a short amount of time. And, you know, I'm grateful for that every day. So.
Absolutely. You're still definitely young, but accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time. So I'm curious, did you ever play the sport?
To a degree. The only time I ever played a form of football was in middle school, and it was flag football because the school that I went to did not offer tackle football because I went to the same school for middle and high school, grades 7 through 12. It was a private school. And they didn't offer, you know, tackle football. So I played flag football. And that was also something that I credit to, again, my passion for the game was playing flag football for those 2 years in 7th and 8th grade. Seems like a very small thing. You know, we were a small team at the end of the day. It wasn't anything big, you know, just one of those extracurricular things you do when you're a kid. But, I got really close with people over that, and I still remember a lot of specific games and plays and moments, and I don't remember that as well for, other elements maybe of my upbringing. And that's not to say that those were bad or anything. It's just, again, football really stood out in that sense. And, again, I got to know a lot of guys really well, through that sport, and my relationships, through flag football there in middle school carried on, through my years in high school. And, still, I'm still friends with all those guys today. So.
That's awesome. I mean, considering you're keeping friends from middle school, I mean, that's pretty rare in its own right.
We're all really tight. I will say that those guys are my support. I treat them like family. We're really because, again, I went to a private school, and we had such a kind of a tight community. My grade was really small. Those guys, love them to death. Really, wouldn't be here without them. So,
absolutely. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. You end up deciding to attend LSU University. What led you to LSU?
Yeah, man. Well, I'm still here right now, doing my degree. I'm a sophomore. I'm doing sport management, I should say. I just wanted a bit of a change in culture and pace, and LSU was kind of a nice crossover between. The school wasn't tremendously difficult to get into. Not because, I always consider myself decent at academics in high school, but I was never the kid that was taking, a ton of advanced classes. And, I just wanted to go somewhere where I knew that, I would have a good chance at furthering my career and meeting some good people. So LSU was easy enough to get into, wasn't some crazy, again, off the charts academics institution. It's not Harvard, But there was that combined with the fact that they had a pretty good sport management program, again, considering that, they were letting a lot of people in. It's divided into two categories. So we have sport leadership and sport commerce. I'm in the sport leadership category, or I don't know if they call it a category, but the path, I guess, to your degree, it's a sport. They call it sport administration, but it's the same thing as sport management. So it's a sport administration degree with a concentration in sport leadership, and that's a human sciences and education degree. I came here, just looking for something different. There's a great culture out here in the South, in Louisiana. It's kind of like a different country out here, with the things that they do and celebrate. And, I grew up in California. I should probably make that clear too. And I still have my family out there in San Diego. But wanted somewhere where the weather was decent. You get that in the South. You got warm winters, which is a big deal for me coming from California. And then, like I said earlier, just the culture aspect too. Going somewhere where I can experience something different, but at the same time, still get a quality experience.
Fair enough. That makes perfect sense. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously, we talked about your love for the sport, but what led you ultimately into first running a podcast and then eventually writing?
Yeah, man. Well, the podcast was really the first time that I dipped my feet in the water in terms of media, I guess you'd say. A lot of people don't actually know this about me. And Sam, I was surprised that you brought it up. A lot of people don't know that I used to have a podcast. I've only mentioned it a couple times publicly, but that was kind of my first experience. This was during COVID, so going back almost 4 years now. I was at home. I was doing online school. Had a lot more time on my hands than I, would have if I was doing school in person. So I was like, well, what can we do to, pass the time? So everybody was doing podcasts. That was kind of trending at the time. That became big during the pandemic, again, because people had more time in general. I started doing a podcast. Initially, it was just kind of me talking to myself about certain things related to football. And then I started doing the interviews. I've said the one thing that I have said many times, in regards to this podcast on the occasions that I've brought it up is James Butler was the one guy that I credit greatly for kind of springboarding my career in a way, because he was one of my first guests. And I consider him to be the biggest guest that I ever had on the show. I didn't have that many, right? It was a small operation, wasn't getting a ton of views. I didn't even put it out on the platforms. I had it, just on the free sites or whatever. So, not Spotify or Apple or anything like that. But I credit James Butler, who's currently with the Hamilton Tiger Cats running back. I credit him greatly, for coming on to my podcast and giving me a chance when I was just, I think it was 15 or 16 at the time, just trying to do something and look cool, and learn more about the game. And I remember when we, exchanged texts for the first time, I was like, wow, man, like I'm really going to get him, on my podcast. And of course, I'd known him through the XFL in 2020 because he played for the Roughnecks. And he had just signed with the BC Lions right around that time, I believe. So, got him on, and that was kind of my big break. And again, that was one of the things where even though I didn't continue the podcast for that long after, it motivated me to keep going, having those relationships with players. And again, big role as to where I'm at now. So.
Yeah, I would definitely guarantee that the connections you've made over the years have kind of put you exactly where you're at right now. So, I mean, it all paid off, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So obviously you've been involved with multiple websites, whether it's News Hub. I know you were involved with NFL Draft Diamonds as well for a while. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were actually a scout with the Hula Bowl as well. If I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Did some stuff for them. That was 2022 college season. So went to a couple games and, gathered some info. And I mean, it went like I did. The best way I can explain it was, the stuff I did for the Hula Bowl is connected to Draft Diamonds. It's all a part. Damon Talbot, who you probably know, runs all that. I worked for him, so I went to a couple games as an area scout. But then I also just gathered, info from a bunch of small school players, and we did some interviews, and some of that information that I gathered also helped the Hula Bowl, even if it wasn't guys that I was scouting in person. So there's a couple layers to that, but that's the best way that I can explain it.
That makes perfect sense. So, I mean, overall, I kind of have an idea where your answer is going to go here, but what was your favorite part of covering the various leagues and athletes in the various manners that you have?
Yeah, man. Well, you hit the nail on the head, man. I think the answer is pretty obvious. It's the players, right? I mean, I'm very player driven, and the guys that, I work with, whether it's players themselves or coaches or other scouts or people in the media like yourself, they know that I'm very player driven, and that the relationships that I craft with these players is the most important thing to me. And again, now that I'm in a position where I can, help sign guys to a team and get them opportunities, those relationships that I have with the players are even more elevated because, it used to just kind of be for fun, right? You're getting to know guys. It's cool to, know pro football players, especially when you're a kid. I think that's something that a lot of people gravitate towards. But now it's related to business, right? Like now I'm, I have a position, people trust me, and it spreads to multiple different areas, right? Like I work in the IFL right now, but I have many good connections over to some teams in Europe and, things like that. A couple of CFL teams, guys have taken a liking to what I do and my story and where I come from and how I operate. And I take great pride in that. So yeah, definitely the player element, I'd say, would be the most favorite part of everything that I've done, both now and in the past. Because like you said, where I started was the media. I was writing, I was doing podcasts, I was interviewing guys, any sort of opportunity to get my foot in the door. So
definitely. So what kind of helped you develop this mentality where you just kind of jump headfirst into anything that you're passionate about? I mean, we've talked about how you've been a writer, you've been a podcast host, now you're an assistant director of player personnel for an indoor football league. I mean, you kind of seem to have this mentality of just, if you want to do it, you're going to do it.
Yeah, man, I would say I'm pretty driven, and again, I take pride in that as well. That was something that, again, I learned over the years. And I think a lot of that drive stems from, my high school years where there was some stuff with my health and COVID. And I kind of felt like I was robbed a lot of things, right? And, coming out of that, I just felt like, we need to not necessarily move faster because I like taking my time with things, but I want to make sure that, I'm always making a positive impact somewhere. I'm always working towards something greater. And again, the people aspect here really plays a significant role. I just love helping people, right? And every job that I've had, ever since I got into football has helped somebody in some way, and again, that's something that motivates me, within my job and then outside of that, to, keep exploring other opportunities and just getting better in life as a person, right? I mean, there's much more to me and much more to everybody else than there is inside of the job. You got a whole life outside of your job and outside of your work, and the things that I do in football, as they do for many people, carry over just into day-to-day life. So that's why I think, I'm driven at this age, maybe more so than some people. A lot of it, again, just has to do with my past. And, I found my calling in a way, and I've been told that by, again, several people that are both my friends and people within the industry that I highly respect, that I have kind of, quote unquote, found my calling. And, to find that at such an early age, again, not a lot of people do that, but I try and use my platform to show people like it is possible. If you do put in the work, you can find these areas where, you really settle in and you really become sort of a master in your field in a way. And I never want to say that I'm the best. Like, I think I always have things to learn. Nobody's perfect. But there really is opportunity if you go and look for it.
I would definitely agree with that. And I love that sentiment. So, I mean, obviously the big question at hand that everybody's going to be curious about is how were you able to transition from the media side of things into the personnel world?
Yeah, well, when I went into media initially, I always knew in the back of my head that probably wasn't going to be the long-term goal. I had always wanted to do something related to player personnel. So when I did media for those, handful of years, I was just very careful with what I said. And again, I really cared about developing relationships and not just making an image out of guys. Like, I really wanted to represent guys in the right way and just be positive overall. I mean, look, I know in football there's a lot of drama. Sometimes things don't go right all the time. There's a lot of guys that try to be insiders, that dig up information, and it might not look so good for a certain player or team or coach, whatever. But I was just always positive. I wanted to use my platform to, make players look good and highlight guys, that I felt like never got the right opportunity or never got the right look. And, I was able to successfully do that. And the way that I just explained that is very similar to how you go about things in player personnel. You want to give somebody an opportunity that you feel like has been overlooked. Somebody that, is looking for something, thinks the same way as you, that you see, has a future. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the best way I can explain that. It is an interesting, I will say, it's a transition that only so many people can make. And I feel like because I'm young and I can sort of read into trends maybe a bit better, and also the fact that I wasn't some lifelong media guy that had been doing it for 20 years, I think all of those play a role into my specific situation. But again, I also want to show people like it is possible. You can go from doing one thing in your field to another, even if the transition is not one that is seen typically.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely. I mean, because this is definitely not something you see a whole lot. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, Mike Mayock was kind of the crowning example of being able to make that leap from media into the front office. And obviously it didn't work out so well for him. You're set up a little bit better, obviously. But what ultimately drew you to Vegas? I mean, I know there's a great setup there in terms of the head coach, the other front office personnel. Was it a chance for you to learn and develop as a scout in your own right?
Yeah, man. I mean, really how that all came about, I knew that after the XFL season last year, which I was doing media stuff for, I knew that I wanted to start making the transition after that, because I felt like that was kind of the peak, in a way, the pinnacle of my media career. I felt like I had fulfilled my role there and I was ready to try something different. So at first I talked to a handful of CFL teams, and was able to develop some relationships through that, but wasn't quite qualified for that yet, and the CFL also has a football ops cap. So unless I was an intern or something, you couldn't really, it's hard to break in there is the main point. And that's still something I hope to do in the future. Again, my connections to that league are very strong, but after I initially tried to get in with the CFL and that didn't work, I was like, all right, well, let's, take a look at some other options. So, the IFL was the first league that stood out. I inquired with a couple different teams, and, Mike Davis there in Vegas, the head coach and general manager, was the one that ultimately gave me the opportunity. We had a good first phone call, and then had an opportunity to meet him in Vegas when I went to the IFL XFL Combine. And from there, a couple days after that, I was able to get on board, and I've been working with him ever since to construct the roster and just help manage things, scout and oversee players. So yeah, that's kind of how that came about, and also there was a couple other people too, that I think I would say were good resources and maybe put a good word in. Again, people that have some CFL ties and things of that nature. But yeah, man, I've really been enjoying it. Vegas, I do take pride in the fact that we are, I'd say, the leading indoor team when it comes to, overall facilities and management. I think that, Vegas, with the sports boom that's kind of happening there, has a really strong appeal, not just for people like myself who are employees, but for fans as well. So yeah, just really happy to be there. I mean, you can't go wrong in Vegas, at least, well, as long as you're not gambling too much. But, I think overall, man, I see a great future in Vegas, not just for our team in the IFL, which is a small piece in a big picture, but again, for that whole city. I mean, it just seems like, the sports world there is developing rapidly. And I mean, they're having the Super Bowl there next week. So that kind of tells you, again, all you really need to know about how things are going over there.
Yeah, definitely great points. I mean, Vegas is kind of booming when it comes to sports. I think they're going to be doing an MLS team over the next couple seasons. They've got the IFL. It sounds like an IFA team will be going in there. Just multiple teams, it seems like, year after year. So I'm curious, obviously, we've talked a lot about your connections here and how they've helped you get where you're at. How have your connections to the XFL, the CFL, the USFL helped you as a player personnel executive with Vegas?
Yeah, man. I mean, they've helped a lot. Some of the guys that we've brought in, we're in CFL camps, and we just signed a couple guys that were in the XFL or had signed a letter of intent. So definitely having those connections and being in touch with all the other leagues. I mean, that's extremely valuable expertise, and I think that's something that maybe helped me get into this position, was the fact that I did have so many resources in so many different places. And I knew the first day that when I got to the IFL that I wanted to bring in some of these guys from other leagues, because look, there's some kind of stigma out there that, the whole league of opportunity thing, is a scam to an extent, and it's a lot of retread guys. And when I say that I want to bring in guys from other leagues, that's not necessarily what how do I explain this? So let's say the XFL, they were big on player 54, right? They had guys, coming in that were cut from the NFL, right, to get another chance. Well, in the IFL, I'm trying to do that, but with the guys that were cut from the CFL and cut from the XFL, because those do happen too. Guys don't make those leagues either. So my goal, really our goal in Vegas, and this is something that Mike pushes a lot too, is, it's a platform, right? You come in here, we give you an opportunity. Doesn't necessarily matter where you've been before. Like I targeted certain types of players, but at the end of the day, we cast a wide net, and you come in here and we want to give you the best chance that you can to demonstrate your skill set so that you can move up to another league. Because Mike, used to work in the CFL with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, still has plenty of connections up there. I have plenty of connections in the CFL as well and at the UFL level. So we're just trying to get guys opportunities. It's the same type of thing, right? Like you come in, you develop your game. It's not necessarily about staying there, although if you like it, then why not? Some of these guys, in the IFL and other arena leagues, they go make great careers, and spend many seasons there. I'd say that's probably more common, in AFL and NAL. The IFL has presented themselves as a developmental league, especially with the new roster changes this year, where you can only have 8 guys that are over. I should probably know this, but it's 7 or 8 guys, that are age 28 or over that you can have on your roster, and everybody else needs to be 27 or younger. So again, really pushing the player development aspect there.
Absolutely. And obviously the IFL has proven to be a great launching pad for careers. I mean, I don't have an exact number at this point, given everything that's occurred over the past, 6 months with the UFL and the USFL, XFL. But I know at one point there was nearly 50 to 100 guys that were in, the CFL, XFL, USFL that had come out of the IFL and some of these other indoor leagues. So obviously great opportunities to be had. So obviously another big question that's going to be coming out of this from a lot of players that are watching right now is how can they get a hold of you? How can they get their film in front of or the rest of the eyes in Vegas to be evaluated?
Yeah, man. Well, my DMs are open at any time. I've got my phone number and email posted up on Twitter and LinkedIn. I got a lot of DMs to go through, so sometimes I prefer email. It's a bit less cluttered that way. But yeah, man, I'm always happy to take a look. I'll say right now, we got training camp coming up in a month, so our roster, couple tweaks that we're trying to make here, in the final couple weeks, but our roster's pretty much full. We're at the point where we're going to have to cut some guys, get down to the 25 going into the season, which starts in 5 or 6 weeks. I should know these dates, but our roster's pretty full right now, but I'm always happy to take a look. One of the things that I'm tasked with doing as the assistant, is I compile a short list. So even if our roster's full right now, as I pointed out, we have a lot of guys that might leave mid-season, go to the CFL, go to the UFL, or they get injured because that happens at any level of football. And then we need to bring somebody in on short notice, and it's a bit different of an operation in season because before the season, you've got weeks and months to figure that out. You can take time with your player evaluations, but when you're making roster transactions in the season, you want it to be quick and efficient, and you want to know that you have the right guys. So I have a list of guys that I know that are available at any given moment that I can call up and be like, hey, man, we had so-and-so go do whatever, or he's out. Can you come in and replace him, and we'll see how that goes, obviously, right? This is my first year working with a pro team, and, we'll see, we'll just see how it goes in that regard. But, yeah, that's another thing, right, is, the roster does change. Like when any team says final roster, it's never the final roster. If you look at, CFL, UFL, like the guys that start the season, or the list of guys that start game one are not, some of them in most cases aren't there at game whatever. You look at how different the rosters are from start to end of a season. And I expect no different here in the IFL. It's a developmental league, and guys are going to go off and do different things, and you're going to have injuries. And even in camp, we'll see a couple guys, might turn up, and we might have to make some adjustments. We're not afraid to do that. So, again, a lot of little things there, right, is when you do player personnel, again, it's all about the little things. And, that applies to a lot of jobs, but I think specifically for what I do, it's like, you just kind of have to know where guys are at any given moment. You keep tabs on everybody. It's a lot of networking and resourcing, which is honestly what I've been doing now for several years. So it's not too different to what I was doing before, except again, now it's with a specific team. But yeah, maybe that helps give you some insight as to what that looks like.
Absolutely. So we got a question from the crowd, which leave it up to Krish. Always has to go to the quarterback position. He's curious. You guys got a couple great quarterbacks there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you have Jorge Reyna and Jerome Johnson, correct?
Yep, and Joe Mancuso. So we got our three. Yep.
Oh, my mistake. I was not aware Joe Mancuso came back. So he's curious. Do you see any of these guys ultimately potentially getting traded or, moving on to another team?
It's the IFL game. I know we're going to have a battle in camp, and it just as many, teams deal with or look at, it's whoever's the best wins. And, I don't know right now if we're going to keep all three or, it's not something that we've talked about yet. But, yeah, it's when you have, quarterbacks, a bunch of quarterbacks that are good and, maybe some of them have different skill sets, you figure out, which one is going to be the best. And right now it's still open to my understanding. So. Absolutely.
This might be a question that I'm not sure you can speak a whole lot on, but you guys just recently hired a couple coaches, one in particular that drew some attention, which was Curtis Chin, former head coach for the Tucson Sugar Skulls. What do you believe Curtis Chin's going to bring to Vegas on top of what you already have there in Mike Davis?
I think it's a fantastic move, and Mike, Mike makes these swings. He brings in some guys, and that's been good to see. Yeah, I think Curtis brings a lot to the table, man. I was following his kind of career, really before I got into the IFL too much. He had one of the quickest rises that I've seen from any pro coach, where you go from, assistant coach of the year in Tucson as an offensive coordinator, you're upgraded to head coach, you win head coach of the year, and now he's going to become a coordinator with us in what is a bigger market. Yeah, man, I mean, I think he brings great things to the table, and the entire coaching staff really. I think what's nice is, it's a lot of young minds, Mike himself included. I mean, these guys have a lot of IFL experience. Some of them, you look at Curtis Chin, you look at Xavier Jackson, is our defensive coordinator now. We have a lot of guys with experience, but it's still a lot of guys that feel fresh, and these guys have a younger mindset, and so do I, right? I'm the youngest there, so it's all about picking up on those tendencies, what's going on in the game right now. And, with the older coaches, not that there's anything wrong with, older coaches. I mean, man, there's some great, all-time guys at the arena level and outside, but sometimes those guys follow an older approach. They don't look at the trends. They don't look at, what's changing, what's new, and that's, they can operate however they want. But I think, we're ready to make adjustments, on the fly and try and be the best team.
Absolutely. So Krish has another question for you. I know you and I have talked about this already. Krish, I'm sorry that I didn't already give you the answer to this, but are you guys bringing back Darius Geis for 2024?
No. Look, Darius is a good guy. He's a great guy. He was there last season before I got there, but I did talk to Mike about this, and we both know Darius very well. But that's just it's a business decision. It's not I'm still friends with him personally. I talk to him all the time, but sometimes these things just, it is what it is. It's business. That's all I'll say.
That is 100% understandable, and it doesn't always make sense for both parties, for that matter. So Tim Capper has a question for you, which this is a great question. Evan, the IFL is currently the longest running indoor and arena football league in North America. However, in 2024, the AFL has returned, as we all know. Has it been challenging to fight for players who might be interested in the new AFL?
Yeah, Tim, it's a great question, man. Yes and no. Most of the players that I've signed, to my knowledge, did not have much interest from the AFL. But, in all these leagues, money talks, right? And, AFL is, paying their guys more. Now, look, obviously, it's a bit of a different game. It's a bit of a different player, I think, in the AFL, especially with, some of the guys that I've interacted with on that side. Again, they tend to sign more veteran guys, whereas I'm looking at the 24, 25, 26-year-olds. Like, if you're older than 27, you better be bringing something special to the table, or else I'm not terribly interested. But, yeah, man, there's definitely been a couple players where, you go back and forth, and, I have had a few. I'm not going to name names, but, yeah, there have been a couple guys that did sign with AFL teams that I felt like were quality athletes who maybe would have had a better experience in the IFL, right? Because we pushed that player development narrative, and the guys that we're looking for specifically, we feel as if have tendencies, to go play at a different level, where, again, as I talked about earlier in the AFL, you're paying those guys probably to stay. And it could change. I mean, you see, every now and then a guy move up, like Malik Henry, who was signed with Albany, just went up to Edmonton. And he was in the NAL last year with Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. So, you'll see guys like that move up too. I'm not saying we're the only league that can produce talent for other leagues. But, yeah, man, I mean, at the end of the day, I try and sell guys on, yeah, we might not be paying you as much as these other AFL teams are offering, but, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that you have, a career, whether it's here or somewhere else. So
that makes perfect sense. And I think, to your credit, a lot of what you said makes a lot of sense. The AFL has kind of leaned more toward veteran players that know the indoor game already. Some guys that came out of the XFL, USFL typically have some indoor experience in their background as well. But yeah, definitely interesting to see how each league is kind of vied for players this offseason. But another question from Williams. Evan, how do you feel about the state of the league and its growth each year, meaning the IFL? Do you think your team and others can develop true stars and keep getting guys to the next level, kind of keep maintaining that balance?
Absolutely. I mean, if I didn't think that the state of the league was good or that I couldn't develop talent, then I probably wouldn't be here. I feel like the IFL, this past season as well in 2023 because of their partnership with the XFL, but especially now, I feel like they're at a really good spot. And that's a good thing because now you're starting to see more competition, right? Like Tim was talking about the AFL. The arena space is starting to get crowded again. It's making a bit of a comeback. And I know that, indoor football and arena football are two different things. I know a lot of people that watch this channel understand that difference. I mean, there's a lot of people that I work with who don't as well. But, I feel like, I feel like the league's in a really good spot. And again, the way that they've pivoted towards bringing in younger guys, from maybe smaller schools, that really fits sort of my persona and what I like to do. And I know I mentioned earlier, like I was looking at bringing in a lot of guys from, CFL and XFL, and we have brought in some of those. At the same time, I look at these all-star games and I see some guys from, Division II and NAIA that I really feel like could have a future in this league. And again, get looks from maybe the CFL or hell, maybe the NFL level. I feel like ultimately the IFL's in a good spot, and we'll see how things go this year. But they've made a lot of strides. I think the claim to fame is that it's been the longest running indoor league in the United States. For they just had their 15th season last year, going on 16 because they started in 2008. It just seems to be staying on that upward trajectory.
Absolutely, it does. And honestly, a big part of their reason is due to the fact that they've had that Vegas partnership over the past couple seasons where their championship game is now held and as now broadcasted on CBS, by the way. So
that's a big deal. That's a really big deal for the game. That's why I want to make it to the championship, man, to tell people that, we're on CBS Sportsnet and we get to play at home at the Dollar Loan Center in a championship game. That's very enticing. So
absolutely. So we've spoken a lot about Vegas, and I'm not about to stop right now. So I wanted to ask a question, kind of give you a chance to give you your best sales pitch in terms of this one transaction recently that happened. But we saw Cameron Dukes, the starting quarterback for the Vegas Knighthawks last season, sign with the Toronto Argonauts and go on an unbelievable run this season. Actually started some games at points in time. How has that kind of helped you to go ahead and recruit players? I mean, you have real world examples of how you can get to the next level.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a great tool, and shout out to Cameron for playing so well and running with that opportunity. He came from Lindsey Wilson College, which was an NAIA school. Perfect example of a guy who really didn't have any looks, came there, used the platform the way that he should have, and then got an opportunity at a higher level. Gets to make more money and saw playing time last season, which was very convincing. That was a big win, I would say, not just for our team and our organization, but the entire indoor game as a whole, to see a guy like that, move up the ranks. And that's what we're trying to do more of, man. I mean, it's simple. Again, we talked about the platform earlier and how you're supposed to use that. I mean, I think Cam Dukes, he epitomizes that more than anybody that I've seen. So hopefully there's more of that to come this year. I know that, I think last year Mike lost more guys to the CFL and UFL as well than he maybe expected. And I don't think we expect that this year, but there definitely will be some guys, every year that there's opportunities and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, hats off to Cam, man. And, I wish I had been there, earlier to work with him and to see how he operated, because it was awesome, watching him throw it around in Toronto last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Great IFL quarterback. Also a great person off the field. I've had a couple conversations with him. He's very humble. Just wanted to shout out Cam Dukes because, why not? But Anthony Miller, our good buddy, has a question for you. Any Vegas players we should watch out for this year to be impactful on the team?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot. The one guy that I think I've talked about, maybe with some other people more so than others, would be Nick Andrews from Bethel, another NAIA guy. He signed straight out of the NAIA into the CFL with Edmonton. Didn't make the cut up there. He was cut pretty early, unfortunately. But then, bring him into the IFL. We'll see what he can do this year. I really liked his game in college. I personally thought he was, maybe the best NAIA player, like at that level as a pro prospect, not just at his position, which is D-line. So there's that. So really excited to have him on board. I'm just kind of looking here at my list because I write these guys down. One guy I will say, who's a bit older, who's kind of our, major veteran acquisition would be Derek Jones from Ole Miss, who has USFL, XFL, CFL experience. The guy, he played in Frisco last year. We traded for him. Again, really just brings a veteran element to the locker room. Excited to see how he plays. He's got the NFL pedigree. He was drafted by the New York Jets, I think, in 2017. So really excited to see him. There's a couple guys that I'm not going to talk about because I don't think the signings have been made official yet. You and me can talk off stream, Sam, maybe about that. I'm just not going to risk that because I don't think it's out yet. But there's two guys that we got, these past couple weeks that I would say might be the most significant additions yet, at least for me. So.
You heard it here first. Keep an eye on that transaction wire and Vegas's social media pages to see which players Evan's talking about, because there's definitely some interesting players coming out of Vegas every year. That's a big reason why he saw so many players leave for the UFL, CFL, XFL recently. I mean, the success that Vegas has had is very well documented. I would honestly sing your guys' praises in terms of getting players outdoor over the majority of the teams in the IFL, and I mean no disrespect to any other teams. That's just, the track record that we've seen over the past couple of years. Outside of Massachusetts, I don't think anybody else really can argue that claim. But realistically, just super excited for you to get this opportunity, Evan. I mean, honestly, I couldn't speak more highly about you. I mean, when I met you and you honestly told me how old you were, I was surprised, because since the moment I've met you, you've carried yourself as such a professional from the first moment I met you. And I mean, every conversation we've ever had, I'm honestly taken aback by how knowledgeable, how intelligent you are. So, this is a well-deserved. I'm very excited to see what you do with it. And I definitely know this only the first stepping stone for what's going to end up ultimately being a very long career in personnel for sure.
I appreciate that, man. I'll say this much, I just like we talked about the players using this as a platform, like I'm using this as a platform, and I take this very seriously, in these past couple months where I've had the ability to communicate with so many different players, and not just players, but, so many different coaches and people from other organizations. I mean, again, it just opens my eyes even more to, the world of football and how great this game is. And, really it's just been more exciting than I think I can explain. So.
I definitely agree. Former guest Steel Roaring checking in. Shady's the man. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. One quick question before I let you get out of here. The final question for you tonight is very clear. I mean, what's your ultimate goal with this? Is this to ride this all the way to the NFL, or I mean, would you prefer spring football? I mean, what's your goal here?
Yeah, that's also a pretty, complex question in a sense, because I get asked it a lot. I think a lot of people, look at me and they say, well, I'm sure you want to go work in the NFL, right? But I don't know, man. I'm not set on that. Like, I think if an NFL opportunity came calling, like if the general manager of the New Orleans Saints, called me up right now and was like, hey, like, you want to come work with us, kind of hard to turn down that opportunity. But at the same time, like, I have a really good sense of where I'm at. And as I pointed out before, I think like the CFL is a very intriguing league with what they're doing, and the type of player that they bring in is really important to me. Like, I enjoy scouting a certain type of player, which can be found, both at the indoor game and in a lot of these spring leagues. So we'll see, right? I wouldn't be opposed to staying in arena football. I think there's a lot of potential in these leagues, and depending on what role I can have, I feel like there's a lot of things I can bring, to a team, and there's just a lot of players that I can give opportunities to. I see these guys all the time, man, and there's some guys that like I said, I've lost and I wasn't able to sign, but you just realize how much talent there is out there, and that motivates me to stay in this kind of role regardless of where it is. To where I can, again, get players signed and watch them develop their game and play good football.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you so much for your time tonight. I've already held you up for almost an hour. Real quick before we get out of here, where can everybody find you again if they would like to get evaluated by the Vegas front office? I know you only have a couple spots left and maybe a short list spot here or there.
Yeah.
But ultimately, might as well shout it out one more time.
For sure, man. Yeah, well, Twitter's the main one. Evan_Willsmore. You got it right there. I'm on LinkedIn too, just my name. I use that a lot. Instagram's the same as Twitter. I don't use that as much. It's more personal, but if you really want to message me on there, DMs are open. On my Twitter, I should have my email and my phone number. Feel free to use those too if I don't get back to you on the other platforms. Like I said, email I guess is preferred just because, over the past couple months, my inbox of DMs, it just grows, and I go through a couple every day, but it keeps getting replenished. So I don't know. It's going to take me a long time to clear that out. So, those are a couple options for you. Really anything. I'm on every platform. So.
Absolutely. Let's go Knighthawks, man. Love that team. And Brian Scott, one of your recent testimonials, tuning in.
Love you, Brian. Love you, man. I appreciate everything you've done for me. Glad to listen to this.
Definitely. Thank you for tuning in, Brian. We appreciate that. Still got to get you on. You're still being elusive, but we'll get it someday. But definitely appreciate your time, Evan. This was interesting. It was interesting hearing your transition and everything in the story. I hope everybody enjoys it, when you watch it back and all that. And again, just really appreciate your time and wish you the best of luck in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Sam. I feel like not to toot my own horn here, but I do feel like I have one of the more, unique stories in this space. And, at 19 going on 20 years old to be able to work with players this closely and to have such a significant say, I take great pride in that again. And this is something that, I just can't explain with words how much it means to me. So, yeah. Definitely can only imagine.
But on that, thank you everybody who tuned in. Make sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe. I guarantee this will not be the last time we talk to Evan, so make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and also following along with everything Vegas has going on this season, because I guarantee there's going to be a lot more exciting football coming out of that team this year. On that note, we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer.